Wide out. Power. Wide out. Power. Shove. Pull and pull, pull and pull, pull and pull. A.
This athlete certainly has started quickly here, Paula.
Yeah, he's attacking well up the hill as well. You can see him gritting his teeth, trying to keep his sights and his eyes fixed on, not on the top of the hill, but just on the heels of the British runner ahead of him, James St. Murray there to... Yeah, he looks okay. I think he's comfortable. He's actually extended that gap slightly over the Portuguese team behind him. Belgium now moving through it and starting to challenge the Spanish team.
Yeah, McMurray's
Well. Welcome to the Power Hour Show, brought to you courtesy of a Perfect Balance Clinic. It's a show for runners, it's a show for running. Tonight, I'm joined by two guests who've been on the show before, but we decided to bring them back because we did not exhaust all their experience and their expertise in finding out how it is that they get along with their patients. We are talking group dynamics tonight. Athletics has got a culture of groups. People train in groups, whether they are event groups or they are club groups or whatever it is, the demarcations or the classifications or what would have brought about the group. In some cases, in most cases, it's because of the coaches. It's the chief coach, the head coach. So they bring up these groups as this way. So I'd like to welcome John and Matimba. Welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Thank you. Good to be back, Stan.
Good evening.
Good show. Now, what have you guys been up to, ever since we had our last discussion, which is probably, maybe 3, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, and we've gone through a second lockdown. And what's been going on there? John, Masimba, tell me, what's been going on down your end?
After you, Masimba.
Cool. Thank you. We had our last conversation. Obviously, lockdown has happened. A lot has happened as a coaching team as well. So off the back of our last conversation, when we were talking about groups and how we train large groups, a large group, for example, we went back and thought, okay, how can we do this better? And one of the things that we thought up was, okay, we as coaches need to know each other better. So we both went through personality tests to see what strengths we could bring to the team. And as part of that, we also looked at group identity. What was our vision for the group, and where did we want to see the group going? Mission statement, etc. Because we believe off that identity, off that unified vision, we could then get a bit more buy-in from the rest of the group to say, okay, this is where we're going, and everybody has agreed that this is our identity and we all want to go to that. So buy-in should be a lot easier from there. We then got into some other topics with the group, where we kind of opened it up to the group and senior athletes and said, okay, this is our thinking. How do we get on with? How do you, as senior athletes, view the younger members of the group? What is the interaction like? And we asked the same thing of the youngsters. Yeah, we got some very interesting responses. I'm going to pass you back to John now.
Okay.
So basically, just for viewers that maybe have missed you the first time around, where are you guys based? What's your club like? Could you just tell us a bit about that?
Okay, we're at the Aldershot Farnham and District Club in Hampshire. It's basically, I suppose, mainly a long distance club. That's where the most success has been in the past. There's been a few Olympic runners and things like that. Steffi 12, she's the latest one that's come through, and there's a few more behind her now who are sort of knocking on the door. The club itself, we don't have our own track. We have the use of the army track at Aldershot, which is nice in as much as it's a good track. It's a Mondo track, it's very fast, although for training that can be a bit hard on the old body. But the only trouble with it is, of course, it does limit the amount of times that we can use it. So one of the biggest issues that we have is track time and quality running surfaces. Lots of clubs, obviously, they can use a municipal track or whatever. It's open all the time, and so they get much more freedom to coach than we do. So it means Tuesdays and Thursdays, really, that's it. With a group of up to 26 or 27 athletes, personally, I wasn't aware that our group was anything special in terms of size, but I understand that we're quite a big group. So a lot of our soul searching during the last lockdown has been about how can we improve the way that we deliver our message to our athletes. Yeah, and so like Matt said, we looked at ourselves first. Actually, I think we came out quite well, Maz.
Yeah.
Probably somebody on the outside would know better than we do. But we're working on that. There's a lot to learn. There's always something new to learn.
Yeah, I need to find out from you two gentlemen. You probably touched on it the last time we were together, but in track and field, it's different from other, sports, say football, for instance, or netball, thing. There is a coaching team. The idea of a coaching team is something that is standard. It is almost expected, and the structure is there. The roles are almost clear. In most cases, they are. Track and field, it's usually a lone ranger kind of sport. The coach is out there and they work with their own group. How did you guys break this mold, to have two coaches working with the same group? How did you manage it?
Very good question. Now that's asking a lot of history. I think at the time that I took over the group, because part of the history was that the previous Leeds senior sports coach who was there, he retired, and I came from a position of I was competing in training, and then went through all of my qualifications, etc., and took over as coach. Obviously, part of it was my experience. At that time, I believe John, you were still training and still competing. And then when John, retired, against his running, he still wanted something to do. It's still coming down to the track because it was part of his routine. It was like, okay, you know what? I could actually use some help, because one of my philosophies is I want to help as many people as possible. So when the youngsters were coming up from the intermediate group and from the young athletics group, and the coaches were saying, "I've got this person that I need to move up." I was always saying, "Yes, yeah, bring him on. Let's see what we can do with them." And it got to say where the group was quite big, and I was like, "Hang on, I might have bitten off more than I could chew here." So I was grateful for John when he was like, "Okay, I'll come down and get involved." And
I've been running since I was 18, competing since I was 18, and I retired from work in 2012. And I thought, I've got no ties now. I don't have to worry about anything. I've done a bit of running with some guys in the corner of the field there. We do our own thing. And that seemed like a good idea. It was fine. And I thought, when I was asked initially to come along and help Maz with the coaching, I thought, right, I don't want to be tied down, because I've got my freedom to do other things in my life now. Go traveling, do this, do that, do this, do that. And I have to admit, within probably about 3 weeks, I realised that I was enjoying this so much, and I was getting so much feedback from kids who, up until then, had seen you as completely invisible, just one of the old guys on the track who just gets in the way when they're blasting past you. And they're actually asking you sensible questions. You think, oh, this is good. I'm quite enjoying this. And it sort of went from there, really. I got more and more and more involved with it. Maz, senior coach, he's the boss. That's fine. I'm quite happy to sort of be the wingman, but I think we both contribute different aspects to it. I've got about 40 odd years of running in me, and my coaching qualifications as well. And Maz has done his, and he's got his experience as well. And between the two of us, we can sort of fill in the gaps, and we can feed off each other. And if you think somebody's doing something, either of us is not enough of something else, we just chat about it. And it actually works really well. I think we get on really well together, considering the potential for ego to get in the way. It's never happened with us. We listen and learn, hopefully, and he's always coming out with good stuff. I get stuff all the time, and it really helps me. So yeah, it's a good sort of symbiotic relationship.
We learn from each other.
Yeah. No, that's brilliant and well done. Yeah, well done, guys, for striking it out that way. I suppose wherever it might be a tired cliche, where there is a will, there's always a way, to get things done, and to see the complementary skill sets that you bring to what you guys do, is important. And the evidence of it is the size of the group that you've got. They obviously have got a they obviously have got a buy-in on what you are doing. And Masimba, you were talking about bringing in the group identity, group vision, group this. How do you how have you gone about trying to establish that? It's easy for people. It's easy for people, not to try. Rather, let me rephrase that. It's very easy to lose people in a crowd. You lose the individual in a crowd. How are you able, you guys, to to attend to the individual in spite of the group, so that they still feel they are receiving individual attention and their own personal goals are being attended to?
We spend a lot of time over coffee. we should have shares in our local coffee shop.
Yes, that's for sure. Then the most sections are both bouncing off the wall.
So we try and get together fairly often to discuss the group, discuss individuals in the group, and what will happen is we'll sit down and a couple of names will come up and we'll discuss a person and some of their traits and how we can work best with them, what they need to focus on just a little bit more and pull back from. And again, we try and one of the big things that we talked about, John and I talked about when we were talking about group identity was, what are we doing for the person as opposed to the athlete. Because if we're just talking about the athlete, we're just talking about building an athlete and somebody who goes out and runs personal bests and stuff. But what difference does that make for their life? So again, when we discuss a person at this meeting, an athlete at our meeting, we try and take into account things that are happening external to our time at the track and how that will influence what's going on.
Quite often you get a massive drop in performance from somebody, and you think, what's going on here? So quietly take them to one side and say, you okay? And it's lovely when they actually open up to you and tell you things about what's going on at home, what stresses they're under, they've just got an exam. As long as you know what the situation is, you can easily change the session and bend it around them to make it fit for them. There's no point in grinding them into the ground if they're not able to do it. All we're going to do is lose them. So that duty of care thing is definitely a very important part of it. It's definitely what we need to do to ensure that we keep our group as much as we can. It seems to work. Lots of people. Sorry, my dog's still going mad. So the external influences of life are very relevant to what we get on the track. Mainly the younger ones, because they've got hormones raging, they've got exams, they've got stresses, and I think they're a lot more magnified. That they show their emotions a lot more, and they get grumpy, whatever. Sometimes it's just family life at home is not very good, so they need to come somewhere. We're trying to provide a place that's reliable, steady, always there, a positive environment, one where there is a certain amount of pressure because we want them to improve. But if you can see them really buckling under it, then just pull back. Just keep them rolling, keep them rolling.
No, it's wonderful to hear that, because you do have, well, any coaching privilege does bring you or an individual coach into a situation where you have to express yourself in very different roles, to different athletes at different times, and even on a one-to-one coaching, which is something that I'm involved in a lot, is you find you have to pivot all the time, between technical intervention and physical intervention, emotional, mental, and just to get this animal called an athlete out there performing in training and performing in competition. And then to be able to to put in place something that, like you guys have done, for a large group, it's really an interesting story. Now, groups have got dynamics. There are some athletes that love to be in a group. And there are some athletes really that find a group situation not down their streets. They think they're not getting all the attention that they need. You have athletes like that. How do you manage that? What's your experience with that? And those are some of the challenges there. What's your experience, and if you have got any blueprints out there that you'd like to share with other coaches and groups, let's hear them.
Yeah. So one of the things that we did as we were discussing this over the last kind of 4 to 6 weeks since our last was go back through a book by Brett Bartholomew called Conscious Coaching. Within that, he talks about archetypes, different archetypes, as in different personalities that you'll come across as you're coaching. And he touches on different traits that athletes have, and what we tried to do was not so much match our athletes to those archetypes, but what it did was it made us more aware of the individual that is in front of us and what and how we may need to change our communication style to suit that person. Yeah, because we could, and this was also something that I learned from you a while ago, was how do you cue somebody effectively? You know, because what I can say for one person can have an awesome effect, and they go out and explode and be dynamic. And if I try and use that same cue for somebody else, it can fall flat in its face. So So it was very much a case of, as we discussed the athletes and people, it was okay. Where does this person kind of fit in? How do we talk to them? And just being who we are as coaches, as people, we naturally talk to some athletes more than others, but everybody in the group gets attention. You know, so there's some athletes who will go to John and speak to John, and they have a very good relationship and rapport there, and others who would prefer to come and speak to me. And that way around, we kind of get to touch base with everybody.
Well, what we do then is, when we have one of our coffee meetings, is we exchange information so that we both know all about all of our athletes, or as much as we can.
That's absolutely brilliant. That I like the acceptance that on a personal level, athletes will relate to different coaches differently. And unless, as coaches, you create that possibility and that, those opportunities, then we might miss out on how to influence their potential. I mean, positively, that is, because we're not attending to the person that they are, which really is what they need for them to become the athlete that we want them to be, or that they should be, or that what their potential so determines. It's brilliant to see that. And obviously that would not happen, or that would be a challenge, quite a challenge, if the two coaches themselves did not have some synergy, coffee shop synergy.
Got lots of that.
Coffee shop synergy, to be able to exchange notes, so that, because I think that in itself then allows attention to the individuals, but still bringing them out to meet the group DNA, if I may use the term. So they all have a buy-in and they're able to, to attain that. So individuals are not lost in a group, basically.
But you're dead right. There are ones that you can lose if you're not careful, because they are so quiet and so far in the background, so self-effacing. We got one especially in our group who's actually told us he has very, very low self-esteem. It shows in his behaviour in many ways, and we're literally having to rebuild him if we can. Getting setbacks. Sometimes he comes down, he's absolutely fine. Other times he comes down, he's completely closed. It really flags up that you've got this massive range of people, from the outgoing ones who just want to take over and be friends with everybody and make a lot of noise, to the ones like him that sits in the background and doesn't really interact with anybody. But you can sort of feel like he'd like to. It's very hard. So you just want to go there and help him if you can, and get him to open the door, let people in.
All right, indeed. Could you tell me about, I think we spent a bit there on your perspectives and your paradigms in your coaching. How about, on a practical down, on the track, what events do you guys coach? And how do you manage, to stretch out the different events or athletes that want different events? Surely you're not,
So
providing opportunities for decathletes, are you?
We've got one decathlete. Yeah, we've got one that's he comes to us for his specific needs. Goes off and does. He's a senior. He's at a master actually, so he's been doing it for a long time. He's very high class, great athlete, lovely to watch. He's got lovely range of movements, but he just listens. He's point and shoot. You tell him, I want you to do this, and if you tell him about something about his action, he'll immediately try and incorporate it. It's great. It's so easy with him. Maz.
Yes. So one of the things that we do, both John and I come from a 200, 400 background, but obviously what we're trying to do is coach our athletes to be able to go from 60s through to 400s, and we do have some special ones who will do longer middle distance type events, your 1500, 800s and 1500s, etc. But the way it's kind of worked out is I'll do the shorter distances, so 60s through to 200s, but there is such an overlap at the 200 that John will also do the 200s and take the longer sprinters, as it were.
Yeah.
But even in that, as I said, we're trying to make sure that all of our athletes can run anything from a 60 to a 400. So if there's a league match or something, any one of them should be, and this is the trick, should be able to be called upon to say, hey, we need somebody for the 4x4, and they'll be like, yeah, let's do it.
No, I'm not running a 4. There's 2 athletes that I'm really going to make run a 400 before they retire. They just don't know yet. My thing is, as Matt says, is to do the longer events, the longer distances. Sometimes we split the group and I'll take some outside. We've got a great big playing field outside the stadium, and we go out and do some real beastly work out there, big winter work, grind out stuff. That's what they want, that's what they get. Great for the CV, great for your head, because it makes you run the distance with the numbers and everything else. But it's a bit more specialised than everybody going out there to do it, because there's a lot of them really not like that at all. And that's when we split the group. Doesn't happen all the time. Most of the time we're together, but just now and again we split it to make it work.
But on top of that, we also try and do is have a Tuesday session as a speed and technical type session, and then Thursday is the more longer, let's go. Yes, we're concentrating on we're still concentrating on form and quality of the runs and the reps, but the technical side of it will be hammered in on Tuesday, and we see, hey, can you carry it on Thursday for distance.
Also, there's a Sunday session that I run up on the hills. So we do lots of hill work, lots of longer range, but the hill work is great. Really make a big thing. And surprisingly enough, the ones that actually buy into that session are all seniors. For whatever reason, we cannot seem to get the juniors to come along to that. I think they're afraid of it, which is such a shame, because it's such a good session. And everybody that does it really likes doing it, because you're off the track environment, you're away from all that. When the sun's shining as well, it's a brilliant session to do. And it's on a Sunday morning, by midday it's done. And you've got the rest of the day on the sofa if you feel like it, feeling good about it, because you've done something already. You know?
Yeah. You know, one of the issues that always comes up, when you are talking the merits of group training and individual training, one of the issues that usually comes up is that individual potential and individual interests of an athlete can get lost in that group environment, because the structure that the coaches put up is for the group and not necessarily for the individual, athlete. And and I heard you just there, Masimba, talk about there's also the club interest. You throw in the club interest in the mix, then you have even you've got quite a quandary on your hands.
Yes.
Because how do you what are your thoughts on it, and what are your what are your perspectives on that?
So as
athletes,
far as as far as we've been able to do, we've had in previous years we had a goal setting form, that we'd send to the athletes, and it's like, okay, winter training is about to start. We've closed off that season. We're doing a review of the next season. Here's our form. What were the highs of your season? What are the lows? What are your interests? What are your goals for the season? And as far as we could, all the athletes who returned that form, and again that was an issue in itself. All of those that returned that form, we tried to then meet with them and chat about those goals and see how we could best facilitate the sessions and the training for that athlete.
Yeah.
This year that was totally blown out of the water. But what we did try and do this year was take a slightly different approach in actually, certainly with the senior athletes, we had a coffee with them. Like I said, we should have shares in our local coffee shop, because we go down with the athlete and have a chat with them, and it's like, okay, a review of the last season, what goals are happening, what's happening in your life right now, how can we facilitate your training to fit in with your lifestyle.
Yeah.
Actually, just having that coffee also, you have a place that is neutral. It's not the track. There's no gradient between coach and athlete. So you could just sit there, have a coffee or two, or hot chocolate, or whatever, and get to know them on another basis. And so you can find out what motivates them outside of everything else. You can find out actually what type of person they are. I didn't realise that one of our athletes is absolutely mad on science fiction and stuff like that. And I relate to that. So we had a good base to work on. And it's all part of the bonding thing. So that next time you go down to the track, you've got that bond, and it's like, hey, how's it going? And they will talk to you more readily about everything else as well. Just targeting certain athletes that you think you might like to talk to. Younger ones, it's a bit more difficult, obviously, but certainly beyond a certain age, or have 2 or 3 of them there together, keeping it intimate, and then just chatting about things. You find that you get a handle on them, which really helps, leverages your ability to get through to them and actually get them to do what you'd like them to do. On the track.
Yeah. Just as a follow-on that one, it's I think it's fair to say you find some athletes are more social than others, and when it comes to club commitments, it's the social athlete that will probably be picking a point here and there. They're willing to sacrifice themselves, to put points on the board for the club.
Yeah. And
you have other athletes that will say, you get my points when I've got my own performance. Basically, I want to do my 200 and that's what I'm going to do. So please don't ask me to do the long jump as well, or the 400 meters as well, just because we haven't got anybody in there.
They'll do their event and then they'll get in the car and drive home. Another good reason to have a coach, a motor coach.
Yeah. How do you, let's hear what your experience is and how do you manage that? You probably don't have these type of athletes, but most clubs do have, such a,
we've got both types of athletes that you've described there. There are some who will like, okay, we need somebody for the long jump, and bam, they're there. We need somebody for javelin, and they're there. And yes, there are others who will turn up and like, I'm just doing my 100 and that's it, you know. And a lot of the time they won't even hang around for the relay at the end. It's just, this is my race and I'm gone. I think we've got more of the first type, more of the social, more of the who want to get involved for the good of the team, and they are at every match and they compete and they do step out of their comfort zone. Yeah, and that's even some of the senior athletes that I'm talking about. I think we are probably going to see the benefits of having younger athletes come into our group. So now, I mean, we're starting to take athletes from about 14 who are coming out of the younger age group who have been doing a wider variety of events, you know. So they've been doing the long jump and high jump and everything else, and they're coming into our sprint group, and we're working on their biomechanics. It's not just for sprinting, but movement and coordination. And so I think in the future, in the next couple of years, we will have athletes with a broader range of movement, you know, a broader movement vocabulary, and so can jump into more stuff.
Also, we get them for the extra 2 years, because before we were picking them up at about 16. And it seems that these days, most kids of that age are, all they're looking for is to get a place in university. So by the time they're about 18, you lose them anyway. So you can put in all the work you like. We don't have time necessarily to correct some of the biomechanical problems that they may or may not have. You have them for a couple of seasons and then whoosh, they're gone. So having them for 4 years, we can correct some of that stuff, get more out of them. And actually, quite a few of the ones that are good athletes have been to university, they've been through the whole course, and we're still coaching them. They've come back after uni now, and we're coaching them as well. We've got 3 of those now, which is lovely. So you see them 3 years on. They've been to uni. They've done the Bucks competitions and stuff like that. Really got into that, and now they're back with us. So we can pick up stuff from them as well because they got more experience, so outside experience. So it broadens the base, which I think is great.
Absolutely, yeah. Gentlemen, I will give you a water break, and when we come back, we continue with some of your experiences here. All right. When we come back, for now, have some.
Wide out. Power. Wide out. Power. Shove. Pull and pull, pull and pull, pull and pull. Right. Welcome back, gentlemen. And
a few clips that I played there is just one of one athlete, Francis Slater. You probably would know, a former sprinter, and then went into bobsleigh, which is something that you guys were talking about, biomechanical skills that you give, and the athletes have them as part of their own skill set, which they use however they want to use it. We never know what they will end up actually specializing in, and I think as coaches, it's just important just to give the skills and let the athlete decide how they want to use those skill sets, in their current athletic life, and even whenever it is or however it is that their journey becomes as they enter the adult world. Right, but Masimba, I know you are into SNC. What does SNC look like? You guys were busy. You're telling me top of the show off air, about your Zoom meetings, your Zoom sessions with juniors and seniors. How do you do that? What goes on there?
They're pretty straightforward. It's so over lockdown. What we did was we ran Zoom sessions instead of obviously the track running sessions. We ran circuits just to keep their conditioning up, their fitness levels up. Because what we found was after the last lockdown, there were some athletes who, although we ran circuits through that, some didn't actually join. And when they got to the track, we had a bit of building to do. So again, this time we said, we're still going to run the circuit sessions, and we invited all of the athletes, and we had the seniors turn up. But we'll get to that in just a second. Back to the actual circuits, it is literally, so part of my day job is running personal training and classes, circuit classes and whatnot. So for me, it was easy enough to take that kind of thinking and conditioning and coaching to the group and say, okay, this is what we need to do in order to keep our conditioning up. So that was a very easy transition, and we just said, this is when we're running it, guys. Please turn up. Again, we're coming back to that buy-in and how much we can get from our athletes. So when we ran them, the senior athletes turned up and they went through it, but we didn't get any of the junior athletes. I'm going to hand to John now.
Okay.
For what we did.
Okay. We had a little chat to the juniors on the track side when we got back after lockdown. I said, why didn't you come to some of these Zoom meetings? They're there for you. And, you look like you're suffering a bit. You're a bit wobbly now. So why was the reason you didn't come? And almost all of them said straight away, we were shy. We were embarrassed. We were afraid to do it in front of the seniors. And they're not watching you. They're too busy doing the exercise themselves. And nobody cares. It's just get on with it and do it, and then get ready for the next bit. But they wouldn't do it. And so when the second lockdown came, we had a thought. We thought, okay. They said they probably would have done it if they could have done it on their own. So we ran 2 Zoom sessions, one after another, one for them, one for the seniors. And the initial buy-in was 8 athletes within 10 minutes. Once I put it on the WhatsApp site, if we do this, would you like to do it? Yes. Oh, there they were. So yeah, it worked. And the ones that did it, we noticed when they came back on the track last Thursday, one of the younger guys who's normally sort of top of the pile in the juniors was not as good as he had been by quite a way, and the guy who was normally second to him was whipping him because he had been doing it. So it was proven it works. So what we're going to do now is keep that little bit of Zoom going for the ones who don't make it down to a gym just because they need it. It's another thing we can do. We've just got to decide on the right day. Initially we thought of Saturday morning. Nobody wants to do a Saturday morning, so we've really got to work out when that's going to happen. There's a lot of stuff going on in our group at the moment. We're changing so many things, about the groups. Yeah, the one of the big things that we've done recently is had a big powwow with seniors and juniors separately, using WhatsApp, targeting both sides, and asking the same question, basically, what is it about our group that you like? Why do you come to us? Where do you want us to go? If there's anything you'd like to change, or is anything that gets on your nerves? And they all said more or less the same thing. We love being there. They think we do a good job, which is nice to hear. But they also said that that this social divide between the juniors and the seniors, we can't seem to close the gap. We've tried. We've had meals before, and none of the juniors would turn up. So we said to ourselves over a coffee, how about we split the group and actually run the group in two halves, one after another, do an early session and then straight into a late session. So from 6 o'clock to about 8:30. It's quite a long night. I hope it's not raining too many times. But our ratio of athletes to coaches is now half. So now, even though we've got a big group, we've got two small groups, or smaller groups, where we can devote more time to each and every one of them. Also, they should feel less, the juniors should feel less threatened by the seniors. I don't know why they do, because the seniors don't feel that at all. What they do feel is a kind of superiority in terms of expertise. The other day they said, look, we'll do that, that's not a problem, we'd love to do that, yeah, no problem. You just give us the session, we'll do it. Really? Oh, okay. Yeah. So, no. We watched them the other night doing their warm-up without any prompting. Naz and I just stood back and watched the seniors doing the warm-up. They need the push just as much as everybody else does.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. My take on that one really is that sometimes we can over categorize and over classify this junior and the senior athletes. You know, of course, it's the place where it works, for different purposes. But from a technical standpoint, there's really not so much that one can call this is a senior motion and this is a junior motion.
Not at all.
Arms and legs. It's just that it's their perception of where they are with their expertise and their experience.
Indeed, yeah. Listen, gentlemen, we are getting close to the end of the show, but you have, aroused the interest there, and I've got a question from one of the listeners, the viewers, Tracy Duke. Let me see if I can flash it here. Basically, they're asking that how do you effectively manage different abilities, which is the athletes, and which is the physicality of the athletes, and the different work ethics, which is probably, the social side of the athlete. Let me just run past there. That's Tracy asking there. How do you manage it?
Okay.
What do you do? And I'm sure it's a challenge that you have faced before.
Oh yeah.
It's a huge challenge. Again, it comes back to what we said almost at the beginning, where we have to speak to and cue and coach the athlete in front of us. And yes, where we've got athletes of similar ability and training age, we try and kind of group them together and get them to run either at a certain time in reps or a certain number of reps, sets, etc. So we try and work it that way. We're not successful with that all the time. Again, a lot of it is the size of the group. Sometimes it ends up that it's just like, hey, everybody is here. This is the session for everybody. Let's go. Yeah, we work with it to varying successes.
I think also if we have a session is a blanket, so we say, right, we'll put the blanket over everybody. This is what we'd like the session to be, and I see that many reps. But then you can say to the younger ones, I don't expect you to do that many reps. I'd like you to do, say, 4 reps instead of 6, but I want them good. And it takes the kind of psychological pressure off them. I think, oh, 6 of those is quite hard. They get to 3 or 4. How you feeling? Okay, not too bad. Okay, how do you feel about doing another one? Make it 5. And before you know it, quite often they've done the full session, you know, and feeling very proud of themselves because they've actually done more than they were expected to do. And that worked. And also on the top end, the ones who are at the top end with a lot more speed and stamina, etc. You say, okay, 6 for them, do 8 if you can. That sort of thing, you know. So everything is there. They all do the same stuff, but just do varying amounts. That is our way of dealing with a great number of different abilities, really. Yeah, and if it's a long session, they might just say, well, they're doing 300 meters. I want you to do 200 meters, especially the juniors.
No, well, I hope, Tracy, you've you know, your question has been answered there, or you know, in one way or another. You know, it is a difficult situation. It is a difficult one, really, because in as much as we have a group, there are individuals in there, and their needs would vary. They'll have different. They might be similar, but they'll have a different shades of similarity. You know, that you need to thin. And yes, Tracy Duke says yes, thank you. Yes, thanks. I have been answered. All right, so gentlemen, well done on that score. You know, on that note, I will have to say my thank you for giving us your time and sharing your experiences there and your challenges and, you know, all your podium moments there with the group. And I'm sure many coaches and many athletes, you know, would have picked up a nugget or 2 there to add to their own repertoire of coaching or training or competition. So what's left for me again is to wish you all the best, you know, as we come out of the second lockdown. We don't know what the competition picture is looking like, but competitions are beginning to be put back on.
Yeah.
And you and your group hope to meet you on the competition landscape somewhere, and continue to share notes. Thank you very much for coming on the show, John.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good shot. That's exactly.